Okay, welcome, welcome. Now we are going to be looking at part 2 of the webinar, Overcoming Maladaptive Daydreaming, What Has and Hasn't Worked. Part 1, we listened to the first interview and talked about that. And it really, her experiences was very typical of a lot of people with MD. Didn't fit my situation, and we talked a little bit about that, but so I'm interested to see this second person, what his experiences are, and they still have not really talked about what has and hasn't worked, so maybe that's going to be at the end of the webinar. So yeah, okay, let's jump into this, and I think I have to go over to the other page to actually click the button. Here we go.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I really want to hear from Rumsey, whose videos I've watched on YouTube over and over again and who's also incredible. I could listen to both of you just speak all day. So Rumsey, with that, you take it away. But Kyla, we will be back with you.
Okay.
Sure, thank you. So I just want to check, can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So I could relate a lot to what Kyla said in many aspects, but I had maladaptive daydreaming in a bit of a different way. So my daydreams were mostly focused on rehearsing for future scenarios, so like potential future scenarios, or thinking and ruminating about things that happened in the past. So I also had some daydreams that involved characters from TV shows, from movies, from video games, and sometimes also people that I knew in real life. And so, for example, it might involve me talking to them about something that was occurring during the day, or something that happened in the past, or something that I thought could happen in the future. So it was like my mind was using these characters as a way to interact with me in the daydream.
Already his situation is closer to mine, a lot closer to mine. So this is interesting. And what do you guys experience? I mean, do you think you identify more with the first, which was more, I think, wasn't hers more fantasy, perfect life kind of thing? So yeah, I'm interested to hear more. The only thing different about his and my experience is more being the negative. He was talking about possible scenarios, and mine usually are possible negative scenarios. So let's go.
And there would also sometimes be an element of imagining fantasy scenarios with fictional characters. So let's say, for example, I was watching a TV show, reading a book. My mind would start wandering off with those characters that I'm experiencing in the book or the TV show, or for example, the video game, and I'd get distracted.
That's a lot to get through.
And then I would be interacting with those characters
too much
for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, for example, about something related to that TV show, or sometimes a completely different topic. And so sometimes these daydreams could last anywhere between a few minutes, but sometimes they could last up to an hour or more as well. And although I mentioned a few minutes, it doesn't sound like a big deal. What would happen is I call them micro daydreams. So I would have multiple like 30-second, 1 minute, 2 minute daydreams over a period of time. So my mind will be jumping in and out of daydreams. And this would happen usually if I was talking to somebody. So I noticed when I was talking to somebody or in a group of people, I would be far less likely to daydream. But my mind will still try to do it. But it would do it very quickly. And I think it's because I was trying to hide the fact that I was daydreaming. So it's like my mind knew, okay, we can't daydream for too long. We need to stay focused, but it would still happen. And the problem with that is I wouldn't focus on what was happening. I would miss things that people were talking about. And you can imagine how that would impact things like work and your relationships. And it did. So these daydreams I came to realize were mostly anxiety driven. And that's why I would be lost in daydreams trying to prepare for various potential future scenarios over and over and over again.
Wow, his is really lining up more with the situation that I experience, the anxiety driven. Okay, good. I'm glad that this section of the maladaptive daydreaming sufferers is getting put out there. Yes.
And with the rumination daydreams, they were mostly me I was worrying about things that I had just done in the recent past. So let's say, for example, if I was at work and I spoke to somebody and the conversation ended, I noticed later on I'd start worrying, oh, did I say something stupid? I would notice like a tiny thing that was slightly maybe just a bit off in what I said, and then I would hyperfixate on that, and I would ruminate about how I could have done that better over and over again. So they were mostly just really, it was anxiety driven. And sometimes what would happen is I would partly act out the daydreams as well. So for example, with hand movements, walking around my room, I wouldn't do this when there were other people around. So I recognized there was an aspect of subconscious control where my mind would make it happen when I was alone. But when I was around other people I would interact with, it wouldn't really happen. I would have those micro daydreams instead. And sometimes I would even not speak out loud to the characters in daydreams, but my mouth would start moving as though I was speaking to those people. And yeah, in terms of how this affected me, well, I lost huge amounts of time. My focus and concentration was terrible. And it would take me quite a while to learn things sometimes because I just couldn't focus for long enough. And sometimes it was clear in my relationships I was spacing out. People could eventually tell. I think it's something that, although I tried to hide, it was pretty obvious when, for example, I would miss something somebody had said. And in my work, it led me to making lots of mistakes, and that just increased anxiety. And ultimately, it led me to have very low self-worth because it was creating a sense of losing control. And that fed into existing depression and anxiety. So,
yeah, I think, yes. Wow. I am definitely agreeing with everything he is saying. So, and I think a lot of people, when they experience finding a group when they find, a group of maladaptive daydream people, and they realize they're not alone, they're not crazy, this is a thing, other people are dealing with it too, that sense of, yes, I'm not crazy. Someone to identify with. So yeah, I'm right there right now. I'm like, yes, because most people that I hear talking about in the support group, they're more like the first person in the first video who would daydream about their perfect scenario, their best life ever. And it's hard for me to relate to that because that's not the experience I was having. So, wow, this is good.
So that's how I experienced maladaptive daydreaming for 10 years. So to recover, I first had to understand why I had maladaptive daydreaming in the first place. So really, it was a way to cope with pre-existing mental health issues I had developed. So that was depersonalization disorder, anxiety, and depression. There were some other things related to that, but that's the core of the issue.
I wonder how I could get that.
So really, maladaptive daydreaming was a way for me to escape and cope with that stress, with the fear from the depersonalization symptoms, and from the, I guess you'd call it, emotional pain that I was experiencing from those issues. So you could say it was really a way to dissociate, which is interesting because depersonalization disorder is already a dissociative disorder. So you could say I was dissociating from the pre-existing dissociation, which sounds kind of weird, but I realize it makes sense because it was a way for my mind to try to protect me. And although people may hear that, yeah, it took me 10 years to recover, it doesn't mean it has to be like that for other people, because sometimes people get worried when they hear that kind of time frame. But the only reason why it took so long is because, this happened, I had the beginning of these issues in 2010, and there just wasn't a lot of information about depersonalization disorder and maladaptive daydreaming. And I also had, although I went for therapy multiple times, there was limited help they could give me, or sometimes I had to wait a long time to get help, to get appointments. So I had to do a lot of my own work to learn and figure things out as well. So I do think in this day and age, people can recover much faster because we have more information and awareness now. So really, to recover from maladaptive daydreaming, I had to really resolve the underlying causes of depersonalization, anxiety, and depression. And really, that was rooted in unresolved trauma from my childhood and my teenage years, and long-term chronic stress, and long-term what I would refer to as unmet emotional needs. So we all have, physical needs, but sometimes it's not as clear what our psychological and emotional needs are. And I had long-term unmet emotional needs. And so what that meant was I came to learn with working with therapists and my own research that my nervous system had become what I refer to as hypersensitive. So it didn't take a lot for my nervous system to trigger the fight, flight, and freeze response. And that's what would end up increasing stress and the depersonalization and the daydreaming. So the more stressed I was, the more anxiety I had, the more I would be daydreaming, because it was a way to cope with that. And so really therapy was a key aspect to this. There were really three parts to the recovery. There was therapy and mindfulness meditation and concentration-based meditation, which I'll go into now. So therapy helped because it helped to bring up those suppressed traumatic memories I had and emotions that were suppressed as well. And through bringing them up in therapy, through talking about it and reliving it, it allowed me to, I had to feel those emotions and relive those memories completely to process them. And it was, of course,
I actually tried some therapy, but then again, I'm in a very rural area and we don't have a lot of mental health options here. And at this time, I mean, this was many, many, many years ago, there wasn't any information about maladaptive daydreaming that I could take and research and show them. So that wasn't even a discussion. And I really didn't have much success with any therapy, because and you know, maybe it's something I should try again, because I didn't have childhood trauma other than just, you know, just didn't get a lot of attention, but a lot of people deal with that. Being the youngest of 3 children with a working mom and a mentally unstable father. But no trauma. I mean, I'm not going to put my childhood on the level of what some people go through, because the trauma that some children experience is just unreal. And my lack of hearing "I love you" or attention or anything is nowhere close to the trauma that some children go through. So I'm not even going to put myself, I don't claim any trauma. So I don't know what to go through. I mean, the therapist I had, well, the two, one was just a total waste of time. Because she just spent the whole time talking about her other cases and how she didn't know how to list me to claim it on the insurance. She wasn't sure, you know, how to categorize what I was dealing with so she could put it in to get paid. But the other guy really seemed to care, but he really didn't have any suggestions for help either. He said, you know, you seem like you have adjusted to your situation and everything, and you've done good, and you've got over it. It's, you know, so he didn't really see anything to work on. So I gave up on that part, and I did try several medications through a psychiatrist. And like I said, they don't know anything about maladaptive daydreaming, or didn't then. So they treated it as intrusive thoughts. But I just couldn't deal with the side effects of the medication. So, but I do agree with mindfulness. Yeah, I need to work on that. I do need to work on that.
Time, but it's through the experiencing of that you, in a way, you start to release the trauma, but also it sends a signal to your mind that you're safe now, that experience from the past is in the past now, it's not happening now. And also therapy helped me to understand what my unmet emotional needs were, and how also I might have been, without realizing, contributing to the stress that I was experiencing. So, for example, having just terrible sleep habits, or not knowing how to set healthy boundaries with people, which would become stressful, or just something as simple as just not learning when I needed to take a break from work and just to do nothing and rest. So a therapist taught me also how to get my emotional needs met in healthier ways. So like they would encourage me, go and socialize, don't isolate yourself, because when you have maladaptive daydreaming and other mental health issues, it's very, it makes you want to isolate. And going out your comfort zone is like the last thing you want to do. So they would encourage me also and show me how to take better care of myself. And they helped me to identify limiting beliefs I had that were holding me back from recovering. So this could be things like not believing I could go out my comfort zone, or not believing I could try new things, or even just not believing that I deserve to get better. I think these are quite common hidden beliefs that we can have.
I hadn't thought of that.
And one of the key emotional needs I needed to start meeting, because I didn't really have it at the time, was meaningful connection. So although I have family and friends, the issue was because of the depersonalization disorder, I was so dissociated from people and reality and myself for so long that I didn't feel connected to anyone. So it became incredibly lonely. And so then I recognized, and this is something I can advise people who have maladaptive daydreaming to consider. So I recognized that the daydreams were a way to get those emotional needs met. So, but it doesn't really truly meet it, which is why it can be so addictive. So I recognized because of the loneliness, the daydreams were a way to try and simulate human connection with these characters that would appear. Sometimes the daydreams of people I knew in real life. It was also a way to try and feel more in control and more empowered. That's why I believe there was so much rehearsal involved in the daydreams. And so these were ways to try and get these emotional needs met. Or sometimes I'd feel more validated than let's say my experiences in real life, where I'd feel better about myself after I had a daydream, because those mental health issues made me have very low self-worth. So one thing I wanted to mention is, before I go into the meditation part, I came to realize that I believe most mental health issues, including maladaptive daydreaming, are a way for your mind and body to adapt to unresolved trauma or unmet emotional needs, and in some cases, chronic stress. So when I started learning about meditation, so I did mindfulness meditation and concentration-based. So with mindfulness meditation, it taught me, it allowed me to become more self-aware and to learn what my triggers were. So I would learn that it was stress and difficult emotions and the fear of the depersonalization symptoms that would trigger daydreams. So the stronger those symptoms were, the more likely I was to daydream and for longer. And mindfulness meditation taught me to be able to neutrally observe and surrender to the intrusive thoughts and the difficult emotions. So I gained more emotional resilience over time. And it teaches you to notice your thoughts and the impulse to want to daydream and to not react immediately. So then you learn to pause and to decide, okay, should I daydream? Should I not daydream? And then you can choose instead to do something that's more beneficial. And it also taught me to sit with those uncomfortable emotions so that I didn't immediately want to escape. And by doing that, I learned to listen to my emotions so I could learn what unmet emotional need is there. And most of the time it was just the need for feeling safe.
Yeah.
And the more I did this, the more I was able to learn to go out of my comfort zone. And that reduced the urge to need to daydream, because I was teaching my mind and my body, we're safe, we can feel the stress, we don't have to daydream all the time. And I mentioned this because something I noticed I used to do, and I think others may do as well without realizing, is we tend to want to resist difficult emotions and symptoms, which is completely understandable. But the issue is it only reinforces to your mind that it's not safe to feel or to experience those kind of symptoms. And then that reinforces the need to daydream. So finally, I was also practicing concentration-based meditation. So what I would do is I would either have a point on the wall. I had have a piece of paper on the wall with just a dot, or I'd have a candle that I would light, and I would just focus on either, depending on which one I decide to do, focus on that point or focus on the candle flame for 5 to 10 minutes. And every time my mind would try and pull me into a daydream or get distracted, I would just, as best as I could, bring my attention back to that point or to the candle flame. And I just kept doing that over and over again for days, for several weeks. And it was after several weeks of doing the mindfulness meditation and concentration-based meditation, I started to notice I was getting better at noticing when I was daydreaming and snapping out of it. Or I was getting better at noticing the urge to daydream and then choosing to not do that. But it's a long-term practice. It's like doing exercise. Like, it takes time. So to summarize, I recovered because of the combination of therapy, identifying past traumas or unresolved traumas, also reducing chronic stress, learning about my unmet emotional needs, and then practicing daily mindfulness and concentration-based meditation. And these allowed me to surrender to the mental health issues and to the difficult emotions I was feeling. And that was teaching my body and my mind that I am safe and I can experience these things and it's not a threat, which meant there was less reason over time for my mind to resort to maladaptive daydreaming. And also through that process, I learned how to meet my emotional needs in a healthier way, such as human connection. And I learned how to increase my self-worth. And I learned how to get better at going out of my comfort zone and being okay with the discomfort. And so that was that's generally how I recovered. It took a while, but that's what I did.
Does anyone else have trouble with the mindfulness and meditation, things like that? I know he said that when your mind starts to wander, you just kind of bring yourself back. Anyone else have trouble bringing yourself back? It's like I always feel like I need to be rushing and doing things, like I'm playing catch up for time I've wasted daydreaming. Am I the only one that feels that way? Let's see.
It's a pretty incredible summary. To talk about an entire journey and an entire shift in mental health perspective in 15 minutes. I certainly was riveted, and I think that's going to be really helpful. I have one quick question before I'm going to talk a little bit about myself. I've been trying meditation recently. When you stare at a dot, what do you think about? Because I can't not daydream when I do that.
Me too.
So what are you supposed to think about instead of daydreaming?
So it's not about not thinking. It's about you just let your mind do the thinking, but you keep your attention on the point. And every time it tries to there's two things. There's the thinking and then your point of attention. So you let your mind do the thinking and then just keep bringing it back to the point and repeatedly.
Okay, because I've been trying that, and it's a lot harder than it sounds.
Yes.
I guess that's the point. Okay, well, that was absolutely incredible. So I did put, and I will do again, a link to your website. You also have a lot of videos on YouTube where you actually explain, and I think later you might even go into a little more detail, right? Because I think that's incredibly helpful. I will say, when listening to the two of you, I did keep a running mental list of places where I was like, oh my God, that's exactly like me. And other places where I was like, wait, that's maybe the opposite of me. So I think that's important, particularly for the mental health professionals. We are all different. So I my thoughts are a little bit all over the place, but I'd like to just run through a little bit of some of those similarities and differences. One of the things, Rumsey, you said was the mouthing the words and the movement. For those of you not familiar with MD, that is very much a part of maladaptive daydreaming, not for everybody, but for something like over 85% of us. There's some degree of what's been termed repetitive or kinesthetic movement, where you find yourself pacing. As a child, I actually shook my fingers and twirled around with this string. If you would look at that behavior today, I think it would look like autism, I think, is what people would think. At the time, my parents didn't know what to make of it. Not sure why we do that, but I found that it got me into a trance-like state and propelled the daydreaming. Rumsey, you mentioned that allowed you really more to keep it in private. Where I learned when I was a child, I would do the daydreaming when I was bored and lonely. I was a lonely child. I had siblings much older than me and went to a private school, so didn't have friends in the neighborhood. And I would do the daydream when I was bored, and I would spin. That to me was not problematic, because I would only do it when there was nothing else to do and I was bored. When it became a problem was when I learned how to do it without the spinning. There was a period where I learned how to do it sitting still. And then it became all day, every day.
Oh, yeah.
Then I could do it in the middle of math class and social studies class. And for me, I took characters in my favorite soap opera and just invented new stories. And if you have a choice between algebra or soap opera, what are you going to pay attention to, right? And so there it became...
That's kind of like what...
I was, every second of the day, I was split between paying attention to what was going on in the real world and needing to check on my characters and spin stories. Unlike Kyla, though, I kind of had the opposite thought. Kyla, I heard you say that you felt like, what's the point of doing anything in the real world when you've got all of this rich imagination? And I've heard that a lot. I made a conscious decision when I was young, saying I don't want to die with what's happened in my head being more exciting and interesting than my real world. So I decided I am going to super overachieve. But I did it at a cost of exhaustion, right?
Now, I'm kind of relating to this. Remember, I just had mentioned a few minutes ago is that the feeling like I always have so much to do. Like I'm trying to catch up. And it's like I never have this huge sense of guilt if I just sit and do nothing, kind of thing. And so I'm kind of there too.
I was constantly I was like, okay, study for 5 minutes, daydream for 5 minutes, pay attention in class, but as soon as kids ask stupid questions, you can turn back to their story. I made sure that I had a very normal looking life. I had friends, I had boyfriends, but I just wasn't interested in them. I would go out with groups of friends and I would ask a question that I knew would take a long time for someone to answer so I could quickly check back on my characters. So it was just this, if on the outside world, nobody would have said there was anything wrong with me, but I was just completely exhausted trying to live the two worlds at once, often not sleeping, and also feeling just so isolated from my peers, knowing that they weren't doing it, and knowing like all this talk about, dating and all this stuff. I really didn't care. Like I had a checklist. I wanted to get everything done to look normal so I could go back to my characters.
Wow.
So some similarities and then some differences. I think one similarity across the board, and the research bears this out, is that it is a coping mechanism and that it does go along with comorbidities. The research is clear on that. The comorbidities can be different. They can be depersonalization. They can be autism. They can be ADHD. They can be social anxiety. They can be all sorts of things. But I do think it starts as a coping mechanism. But one area where I think I was different between the two of you is I know how it started because it was a coping mechanism. I was lonely. I had a learning disability that no one believed I had. I was in physical pain that no one believed. But then when I got older, my life got better and I was happier, and yet I was still doing it, right? I did like what you would, I didn't do the meditation, but I found areas in my real life that gave me joy. And I remember in college being like, I have what I want. I understand why I did this when I was a child. Why can't I stop it now?
Yes, this is a big point because like when I was talking about my experience in the last video, it had started with me and my life was good. I was happy. Everything was going great. I wanted to be living my life, not in my head doing this. So I definitely am there with her.
And I tried everything and I could not do it without medication. So kudos to the two of you who were able to. For me, I think because my comorbidity is OCD, it took a different turn. It started to be, I have to play this scene, and I would play the scene in my head, and then it'd be like, ooh, but the color's not right, or the character didn't say something exactly right, so I have to do it again. And it just became compulsive. And, if I was in the middle of it and had to stop, it would just, it would eat at me. So I went to doctor. And first of all, no one had ever heard of such a thing. They told me there's no such thing as a daydream disorder. But one doctor looked at my family tree and said, wow, there's a lot of OCD in your family. This is not OCD. I don't know what it is, but since your family is so full of OCD, let's give you medication. It was an SSRI, like in the same family as Prozac and Paxil, which I know has different names across the world. I don't know what the names are across the world, but the standard SSRI. But they gave me one called fluvoxamine, which is more for obsessive thought, often prescribed in OCD. And that's what worked for me. In about 6 weeks, I couldn't have daydreamed if I tried. I didn't like that. I didn't like not being able to daydream at all. And through the years, I went up and down with my dose. So it got to the point where I could daydream when I really wanted to, like on a bus or a plane. But it was never the defining moment of my life. And I do wonder, and I've talked to like hundreds of people across the world. And for some, fluvoxamine has worked. For others, it hasn't. For some, Paxil and Prozac has worked. It did not work for me. Kyla, I think it did not work for you. So I've heard from some people that some pretty strong, like antipsychotic medicine, Abilify has worked. I've heard that some ADHD medication has worked, but I've also heard that it hasn't worked. And I think it all goes down to finding out what your comorbidity is, right? I think for me, because it was OCD, I had to get that OCD under control to get the daydreaming under control, right? And for that, I needed medication. So I do think it's about figuring out what the comorbidity is and trial and error. And with that, I have questions for Kyla and Rumsey, but if people either want to join in or put some questions in about what may have worked for you or haven't worked for you, it'd be really helpful. Roland.
Yes, so I can relate to a lot of what you said. And yeah, we are all seemingly very different, right? We're the same, but you're hearing these stories and they all come from different angles. I've spent...
Okay, so all right, so she's jumping on to the next one. So we're going to do that in our part 3. Okay, so interesting. What do you guys think? I like what she just said about that medication is possible to help if you get the right one. Now, of all the medicines that I tried, there was one, and I think it was that Abilify thing. It did stop the intrusive daydreams, but I couldn't deal with the side effects. And maybe if I'd stayed on it, it would have got better, but I was just numb. I felt nothing. I couldn't feel sad. I couldn't feel happy. I couldn't feel anything. It was just, I was like, I can't live like this. So I had to come off of it. I said, I'm just going to have to try to deal a better way. And it has got a lot better for me. And some of the things that has really helped me is controlling my diet and finding healthier outlets to keep myself busy. Sometimes it gets obsessive, like she was talking about, to the point of exhaustion, but it's still better than the numb feeling from that medication. So I'm going to see if I can figure out how to... Alright, I'm going to put that back on. Alright guys, so yeah. Well, we're going to call that enough for today, and we'll pick up and maybe watch the third interview. Maybe we'll do this every Sunday, like our Sunday live chat, so that will be fun. Alright, so I'm going to see if I can figure out how to get our outro video to play. And I will see you guys hopefully next Sunday. Bye.